I have no problem with the Honorable Balaam pulling the publicity stunt the way NUP has been doing, because it is NUP which started with the Kulabisa. Yes, we came up with the narrative of exposing what is taking place in society. So I have no problem with that direction. But then then the other issue which comes out, of course... do
you remember that march?
Yes, I remember the march. And the people who are talking about fighting corruption, most of them are products of stolen elections. And the part of the maladministration, the court system has sat on all the election petitions. Despite the law clearly spelling out what time must they dispose of the petition. So you would see that from the process of producing leaders, people have come out of a rigged process. And now the judiciary is telling us that they sat on the petition waiting for money to start hearing petitions. But the taxpayer is still paying the judicial officers on a daily. I'm showing the level how corruption is embedded. So you would look at that as maladministration. The point I'm making actually, before I respond to what my sister Honorable Rumba was talking about, that again the biggest problem in the country is not even about the corruption. It is about the maladministration. Those who are supposed to be fighting corruption and covering corruption than revealing it. I think I should make that very clear. I was part of the East African Public Accounts Committee where they would create the accountability sector. The accountability sector would mean that all agencies of the state will form part of that. By law, that's how it's supposed to be. But what is taking place in the country? Honorable talked about that, but let me start with in the 9th Parliament where I was with the Honorable Mba and Honorable Oto, the classified expenditure budget was 300 billion. I was looking at the record. Now, it is actually 4 trillion. One wonders what is taking place. So classified expenditure now has become a part of smart. People come and pick their money, then for them they say, for us we are clean. Classified expenditure is where people spend without actually, not everybody, accounting. They will account, the law provides for a small committee of the speaker, the chairman park, the finance, like few people to look at those classified expenditure, which they don't even normally, they have not been actually paying attention to them. But two, and most important, you see there is what we call the accountability cycle. That whoever takes public money under the law must account. Even when the standard person left office. Parliament has made the recommendations on who has actually helped himself with public resources. My sister, she's now there. I think she'd be in position to table the Treasury Memorandum which has been produced. Nothing. In the last Parliament, even when reports were produced, they deny the committee's space to go and present on the other paper.
Okay. Do you celebrate the efforts that have so far manifested?
No, to me, the publicity stand is not going to bring anything, despite the fact I have no problem with it, because this is what we have been doing. You understand? What maybe we need to address ourselves as leaders, if I'm to borrow what my sister what we are saying, does this system work for us? The law the way it is? Because what people want to see, that you see if money was stolen, money has been expended. Because for instance, like assuming if the minister goes somewhere and looks at the building, does he have the BOQ? you understand? To know, like, let's say maybe this what has, you see, now that's why we go for the value for money audits. I'll give an example. When they were constructing, I think my colleagues here would remember the General Central Market. We kept on shouting that the one floor is missing. Then when we kept on shouting, then the data told us that, the cost of construction went up, then we have to forego a whole floor. You understand? But if you got the BOQ, it is very different. So we want to see, in my view, take an example of the budgeting process. They normally bring a budget and say this year's budget is going to be for 80 trillion. Very well knowing that actually it won't be for 80 trillion. They build in like the 3, 4, 5 trillion to go and access money in the 3%, which the law allows them to spend before Parliament approves. You understand? Most of the scandals we have, is that money which is cleared the 3%.
Okay, I want to take something from you.
The point is,
this is more of a public stunt, in your opinion.
To me, it is, whereas I have no problem with what he's doing, because it is what we have been doing. We need to structure. I need to get an undertaking from my sister, Honorable Mumba, that now, from today, I'm going to get in touch with the Minister of Finance. We're going to come up with Treasury Memorandum to show action taken on most of these officers, because most of these corruption issues are very recurrent. Take an example of Uruguay. I was in Parliament. I think in that Parliament, we created, even after passing the loan, forcefully the way it was, the person they were giving the money don't even have money to pay stamp duty to get the money. When nobody walked in the house with an exemption for someone to pay stamp duty, like how they give you a loan, they say you must pay 1.5%. Yes, we actually, if you go and check the record, we moved an amendment to the Income Tax Act to exempt the person who had given the money, borrowed most of even from a commercial bank. Stamp duty, he would not afford 1.5% of the loan he had got. And do you know what happened shortly? Where the dad fought for the money. Remember, local Uganda, local Rwanda. So, but you see, all these things we're talking about, they end up, as the owner just said, they end up in one thing, the Auditor General's report. Because as these things move around, we cannot say, you see, it is that's what we're pointing out.
I beg we continue after the break, but the question remains, should Ugandans celebrate the process or the outcome?